To be really honest, I didn't go to university, so I have no degrees, I have no real qualifications. I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years now. I've, started many companies and, written 2 books, created a school. By all accounts, look successful on paper. And for many years, though, I felt a bit fraudulent because I didn't have anything under my belt, yet I have done the equivalent of like 6 degrees. The things that I have built, created, learned, all the different small courses I've done, the reading, to me, there are so many different ways to learn.
What happens when you realise school didn't quite fit, but life beyond it opens a world of possibility? Today's guest has built her life around helping others do just that. Our guest is Lael Stone, speaker, author, educator and serial entrepreneur. Lael's story is one of discovery after she left behind a system she knew didn't serve her. At just 17, Lael travelled overseas on her own for 2 years, a leap of courage that shaped everything that followed. By 20, she had started her first business, by 25 she was a parent, and by 28 she had launched her first company. Since then, she's built an extraordinary career as a parenting educator, public speaker, author, founder of a school and creator of online courses that have reached thousands of families across Australia and beyond.
So wonderful, listener. What unique lessons will you learn? Well, in this conversation, Lael shares how backing yourself and being courageous enough to try new things can open doors you never expected. How life experiences can be a qualification in themselves and that perfection is overrated. And importantly, that being enough, whether it's as a parent, student or person, Laura, is what really matters. Welcome to this episode of More Than a Score. So, Lael, welcome to More Than a Score. It's lovely to have you here. Something that we do with each episode is I get the privilege to do a bit of an introduction for it. So I haven't just jumped onto like Wikipedia or LinkedIn or anything like that, so stick with us here.
Okay.
But we've got creative, passionate entrepreneur, writer, speaker, lifelong educator, mum of 3, enthusiastic, compassionate connector, TEDx presenter, founder of a school, and I put down impactful ripple maker affecting kids, adults, families, and education.
Oh, I like that intro. I might have to switch up my bio. I like that. Good.
It's so lovely to have you here joining us. We really appreciate you joining. We've been so excited to have you.
Very excited.
So something that we do at the start of every episode is we always ask people, when you think back to the end of your time at school, were you happy with your score?
No. Such a good question. I'm going to have to think way back because that is like 30 plus years ago. Was I happy with my score? I can't even tell you what the score was out of back then. Like, so many things changed. Like by the time I did VCE, I was one of the first years where they started to bring in VCE instead of the HSC. So I can't even tell you what it was out of. I didn't really care about my score because I wanted to go and travel, but also the course that I was getting that I wanted to do was by audition, and I'd managed to get in through audition, and so a score was kind of like whatever for me. I didn't care, but also I think even back then as a 17-year-old, I thought the whole score thing was a bit of rubbish anyway, because I remember even at that time thinking, all this pressure for a number that's meant to define you. This, there's more than that. I think I was looking further into the future than just what this is. So I remember being like a bit whatever about it. It didn't really impact me that much. And my parents definitely didn't put any pressure on it at all. They were like, oh, whatever, like it's just a small part of a bigger picture. So it wasn't a big thing for me. It was a big thing for many of my friends. I remember that, the stresses. But for me, I was like, whatever. And I remember thinking, even if I don't get into this course I want to do, I'll just go travel. I'll go figure it out. Like I had just absolute optimism that there'll be many ways to figure out who I am. So, I didn't really put a big emphasis on it at all.
Can I ask you, if you consider the teachers that you had and the context in which you went to school, how do you think you would have been described as a student?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, I went to a full-on private school. And as I look back, it was probably the wrong school for me. I was far more creative than I was academic. What I've learned about myself as a learner is I have to connect to what I'm learning about. I have to connect emotionally to what I'm learning about. So sitting in a science class, sitting in a maths class was pretty torturous for me. I was just like, I dropped those subjects as soon as I could. I studied dance and I studied drama and I studied literature and just anything that had feeling that I was like, I was into. So I think they would have said I was a pretty good girl. I always did my homework. I was probably a bit half-assed really in the effort I put in. Probably what's written on my report is she could try harder. That's probably what was there. The things that I loved, I put a lot of effort into. And I think those teachers saw that in me. I remember, this is actually something beautiful. I had a year 12 English teacher once, and I remember we had to do this creative writing piece, and she said to me, write about what you love. And she really sat there and going, write about what you love. And so I wrote this piece on dance and what it feels like to dance because I wanted to be a dancer. And then it won an award in year 12, which was amazing.
Wow.
And I don't necessarily classify myself as an author, even though I've written 2 books. I'm a storyteller, but if you were to look at my grammar, you'd be appalled. But I remember writing to that English teacher after I wrote my first book, and I wrote to her and I just said, I just wanted to thank you for you saying that, because actually I have written so many things over the years in the work I do, and I write well when it's about what I'm connected to and what I love. And that has always been in the back of my mind, to write about what you love, what you know. And that's where kind of I've gotten to.
Did you get a response from the teacher?
Yes, she wrote back. How did we find each other? I can't remember. I think I wrote her a letter and I did get a response from her. Yeah. And she was really touched. She'd retired, but she was like, wow, that really means a lot to me.
This is actually a theme, Lael, in every single episode, I think, with people that have been post-school about 20 years. Every person has mentioned this moment that they have reflected on a teacher and has reached out.
Yeah.
Every single person. And it's so interesting. What do you see the role of a teacher to be in a school?
Well, for me, and it's really interesting having created a school as well, is that for me, that teacher is a guide. And we actually call our teachers guides at the school I created. We don't call them teachers, we call them guides. And for me, it's about an adult that holds a place of possibility, that sees you, that sees your magic, that sees what you're capable of, and then figures out a way how to encourage that, how to help unlock the way that you learn best. And I think for me, because I wasn't a classic learner at school, there were just a few teachers who could see that in me and then invited those aspects of me forward. And, that's been really fascinating and interesting to think about as a parent as well of my own kids who definitely don't fit into the classic learning modules at school. So, and I think that really influenced also building Woodline, was just knowing that children all learn differently, and how do we give them the opportunities to learn and feel smart and feel like they've got something to contribute, because I often felt like I wasn't smart at school. I was very emotionally intelligent, have always been, but academically was probably pretty average. And that I remember feeling like I'm not a smart person, and that I carried that with me for quite a few years into adulthood, actually. So, I think, the role of these beautiful teachers is to help unlock the magic that exists within children, and to help them find their way to exhibit that or to express that.
No, I was going to jump in and say we've got a couple of close friends. So one of my best friends and a shared close friend, they talk about themselves not being smart. So my best mate, he never finished high school, incredibly successful, doing really, really well for himself, like by all measures, satisfaction, job-wise, all that. But he still carries with him this thing that he's not good enough in some way because of some sort of different path.
That's the conversation we had. Literally, Dan was asking me when I took a year of leave from high school, he said, do you want to get back into it? And I said, there's something in me. I've seen so many kids go through the conveyor belt of it, and I see so many of them still carry those scores and those report cards and those letter grades with them as a form of identification. And I really struggled with being somebody in a system perpetuating that. So I completely understand that feeling.
Yeah. And I think For me, to be really honest, I didn't go to university. Like, I got into this course, but it was, but I chose not to do it. I went and traveled instead. So I have no degrees. I have no real qualifications. I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years now. I've, started many companies and, written 2 books, created a school, by all accounts, look successful on paper. And for many years, though, I felt a bit fraudulent because I didn't have anything under my belt. Yet now at the age of 50, I'm like, I have done the equivalent of like 6 degrees, right? Yeah. I have the things that I have built, created, learned, all the different small courses I've done, the reading that, like, to me, there are so many different ways to learn. And understanding myself, I like to do stuff that hasn't been done before or do stuff in a new way. So I don't necessarily fit into the structures of what is offered sometimes. And so even going to study psychology or going to do something else, I'm like, nah, I'm going to be bored with that in a few months. I can tell already, because there's more that I learned by doing, and I learned by following others who've walked the path before me. Like, I'm a big fan of the apprenticeship. I'm a massive fan of following, listening, learning from those who've walked the path before you. And that is what I've learned, is how I learn best. And there is a place for everybody. Like, I absolutely say you got to find what works for you. But for a long time, I did definitely carry that I'm not qualified or I'm not smart enough because I don't have these pieces of paper. Yet I put that down quite a while ago. I mean, I tell a bit of a funny story, is I got asked to go and speak at Melbourne Uni twice, actually, a few years ago. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, like, I've never even stepped in a university, right, ever in my life. So I was like, this is a big deal. And I went in and I was doing a talk, can't even remember what it was on, emotional intelligence or something. And I was sitting with these professors and, like, people who were like full-time academics, like, and there was a panel, and every time there was a question in the audience, all the academics turned to me to answer. I'm like going, hang on, you guys are all the qualified ones here.
Like, no, you've done it though. We've got the theory. Tell us how you do it.
And I remember just thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. It was really amazing for me to be like, my lived experience counts, and being in the world, spending thousands of hours listening to people's stories, working with families, like doing the work has given me my own beautiful insight. So it was a beautiful full circle moment for me, actually, to go, there is a place for all things. Like, I absolutely get that. But it made me put down this belief system of not smart enough or not good enough. I was like, no, you've just done it differently. That's all.
Yes.
And I think it's such a common thing with teaching, is that, like, people always remember how the teachers made them feel versus like those set scores and things. Yeah. Can I quickly, Loz? Can I quickly ask?
Of course.
I was really interested earlier on, Lael, when you were talking about you had some friends that really were caught on their score. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if you're still in touch with them now, but as you think about your journey, like listening to everything you've just said, you had this real optimism, this belief in yourself that it wasn't too much about the score versus people that maybe more traditionally were caught up on that. As those friends have seen you go through this pretty amazing journey, have you noticed a change in their perceptions, or are they now seeing things a bit differently, or have they got stuck in quite a traditional approach?
1 or 2 is still in the traditional, this is the way you do it. But I think that's kind of who they are. Whereas a lot of my friends who were hung up on the score went to uni, dropped out. Most of them dropped out. No, none of them. Like, I think one maybe finished their degree. Yeah. The others changed it. Like, one friend, I think, was going to uni for like 10 years and didn't finish anything. Yeah. I think they... with some of them I'm friends with now, and they're like, oh, you just did it the Lael way, which is just doing it unconventionally and just in the way that makes sense to me. And so they kind of laugh and go, well, that's just the way you did it. And I think, for me, I look back and I often, work with parents sometimes around teenagers, and particularly around their own teenage self and what they needed to hear when they were that age, what support. And I was like, imagine if when we were teenagers, the messaging we got from the adults was, this is a time in your life where it is all about exploration. You're meant to make mistakes. You're meant to try things. There is no pressure. You get the next 5-10 years to figure out who you are. And we fully support you exploring and finding what that looks like. Imagine what that would have felt like to hear that, right?
Mm.
And be given permission to play, given permission to explore, to try things that you wouldn't normally do without this pressure of you've got to do this and get this grade in order to set up your future. Like, it's crazy. And so many of them in these parents I work with often will say, I wish there was an adult around me who just said this is just a small part of a bigger story. And this time of your life is so much about figuring out who you are, because you're stepping into adulthood. And in order to do that, we have to try different things. We have to figure out who our identity is outside of our family, all those beautiful things. And to have an ally in that would have been amazing. And I really do think that the messaging that we've been giving teens for a really, really, really long time can be quite detrimental. For some, it serves them beautifully, but a small percentage of them, that's in my experience, is what I see.
Yeah. It's interesting. We talk about play a lot, actually. I reflect on the kinds of things that I used to play as a younger person. I used to write stories all the time. So I became an English teacher, but I also used to make radio shows with my friends. And we laugh. I'm just like, and here I am doing podcasts. And I think that sometimes there's these little hints in the way that we play as young people that we dismiss as just play. But I actually think they're really great glimpses into the pathways of the future if we lean into them.
100% agree with you. And when I do work with some people around purpose and what they're here for, one of the questions I ask them is, what did you used to play?
Yeah.
What did you play? What just took, time just went by? What brought you joy? Like, what was that? And where is that now? What was that sense of freedom you had? What was that sense of just expansion that you felt by playing in that way? And so often what happens is that gets squished out of us as we get older. I mean, and again, even in secondary school, one of the things I think would be so powerful for secondary schools is places for children to actually play. Like, what happens when all of a sudden you get into year 7, we stop playing? And I'm like, we need, recess needs Lego, tables of Lego for 15-year-olds to play with, and other things to create and play that are not just based on this work, because play and creativity is one of the most amazing ways where we learn and grow.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people get worried about the word play as being a bit too childish. So I think that's why sometimes they have like Tinker Labs or STEM Labs or whatever lab. It seems like that's almost the approach to give people the freedom to just be able to explore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lael, I was really interested thinking of, there's so many parts already that we're going to come to some further bits around like the message that you'd like to pay forward and share with parents and things. But I just want to touch on your journey from school. So, you're pretty optimistic. You said, look, I sort of know it's less about the score. I can see there's something ahead. You were really interested in traveling. So I've got down here around you, you graduated from high school and then you went off straight away, traveled overseas from 17 for 2 years, mainly by yourself. And I can see you there nodding away. You're like, yeah, this was...
And can I confirm then that means you finished high school as a younger student, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was 17. I didn't turn 18 till April the next year. So all my mates were 18 and driving, and I was still underage with my fake ID.
Is that why you decide you're like, right, I'm going overseas. The rest of them are all partying. I can't do that. I need to go traveling.
I mean, even when you say that, I look back now and I think, what was I thinking? What were my parents thinking, letting me go overseas by myself at 17 with not much money? But I was like, I'll figure it out. I'll get a job. And back then there were no mobile phones. There was no Zoom. There was no Skype. Like, I had to write a letter to communicate. And maybe once a month I did a reverse charges phone call. As a parent, I'm just look at my mum and go, what the hell? Like, you had no idea where I was in the world. She was like, nah, like, I just had to trust that you were all right. And I'm like, talk about growing up. It was.
Yeah, were they travellers themselves?
No.
Okay.
They'd never been to Europe.
What is the relationship you have with your parents that felt like a reasonable decision to make? Because I think there'd be a lot of kids that wouldn't even attempt in the ask. They'd be like, nah, there's no way. So what was going on in your home that you're like, yeah, I could do that?
My parents were very really trusting of you do you. You find your journey. Like, we're all different. We're all unique. They weren't my whole family are like entrepreneurs. So they're all self-made people. Everyone works for themselves. Like, so it's not you must do this and then go and do that. It's very much about possibility exists. So I think I got into this uni course, but there was this opportunity to go overseas to like do a bit of not an exchange, but go and work in this place for a bit, and then you could travel. And I applied for it, and I think I got in, and my mum was like, why not? Like, if you got into uni, you could always get in a few years' time, like if that's what you still want to do. So they were just very supportive of go and have an adventure, like go see. So I think, there was nothing but like encouragement to go and figure out, who you are meant to be in the world.
Yeah, that's brilliant. In my family, we talk about like positive risk taking, and I've started to realize growing up, my parents often used to just say, "Why wouldn't you try?" So and I've realized it's a real privilege now to be able to have that. There was this thing of just this people around you just saying, "Yeah, give that a go." Like, we back you to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think my parents, sorry to jump in, they were of the generation where, they met when they were 16. They kind of bought their first house when they were 20. They had a child at 21. They got married before that. And then, I came a few years later. Like, my mum was like, we just worked 3 jobs, settled down. We never did that. So go do that. Go do all those things that they didn't get to do. I think that's what they really wanted for both myself and my brothers. And we all went and traveled and did that for many years until we finally went, okay, this is where we are. And I think they really, really wanted us to do that and do it a bit different to what they did.
That's a nice thing. I feel like a lot of people go the other way, where it's like, this is how I created success, therefore this is the map for you. It's really nice that they didn't put their own framework on you. That's really lovely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also too, like my mum is a pretty remarkable woman. Like, she's, I think taught us about, I guess, spirituality or connection from a really young age. So she was very much of the belief of just that life is there to live. Like, and success, what is success? Is it money? Is it a car? Like, that's nothing. Like, success is connection. It's knowing yourself. It's having these beautiful life experiences. So it wasn't seen as it wasn't held up as this is what it means to be a successful human at all. My dad used to say to me when we were young, I don't care if you're a garbo. Like, I don't care if you collect garbage, as long as it's what you're passionate about. Like, that was the messaging I got. It was like, just do something that lights you up. Like, that's what life is for. And so that was the narrative that we were fed in our family.
And it sounds like they didn't just say it, but they actually lived it out too. Because I think there's sometimes people or families or even teachers, we espouse certain values, but then when you're needing to actually live it out, then sometimes it shows up in a different way. But it sounds like that actually came through for you.
Yeah, it did. My mum was a really courageous woman and really followed what her passions were and just would take risks even when she was unsure. And I watched that, and I really do credit that a lot of what I've done in my life and jumping into things, and it has been because of watching her do that and seeing, having that as an imprint and as a role model.
Well, I think if we think of the pathway, so you've gone from school into then at 17, right, we're going overseas, this is what's happening, I'll take my fake ID with me. You go over and come back after a couple of years, and then you decide, I'm going to start my first business at 20.
Yeah.
And then I love when you're filling in the form and giving us some background around that idea. You then became not only starting your first business, but then become a mum at 25. Then a mum of 2 by 28. So, I mean, that 8 years, like, I feel like the amount of stories that you could share within that. And then you've moved on to birth programs where you started to deliver and come up with this playing to your entrepreneurship of first online courses to do with birth programs, first ones in Australia. And then as you go, do you know what? I think I might start a school just to offer something a little bit different. So we'll start and create a school, Woodline Primary. I know we mentioned it before, but again, I think as a complete teaching and learning nerd, like, I'm so fascinated with, especially with the trauma-informed practice and the focus on connection. And then, do you know what? I'm also going to write 2 books. I'm going to write Own Your Story and Raising Resilient and Compassionate Children. And then I'm going to continue to jump on so many different podcasts and continue to influence education as a whole.
Yeah.
As you think of all of that, the question that I had was, when you think of all the successes, failures and learnings that sit within that, all those aspects, what have been the 2 key ingredients that have helped you just keep progressing and making an impact?
Yeah, beautiful question. Without doubt, courage. Like, I am one of those people that I'm like, I don't know how to do it, but I'll figure it out. So everything that I've done, I've had no idea how to do, but there's been a passion there, and I've always had the thought of, but someone will know how to. So I'm a big fan of support. I'm a big fan of asking for help. I'm a big fan of learning and watching and listening. So courage by far is something that I think I have a ton of, and that I have always gone, yeah, I don't know how, but I'll figure it out. I mean, there's plenty of times where I'll say yes to something and then I'm right in the middle of it. I'm like, why did I say yes to this? I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm making this up. But what I have learned that goes with the courage is there's no such thing as failure, because everything is going to teach you something, everything. So some of the businesses I've done haven't been as successful. Some of the things I've done have been really successful, but nothing's wasted. Nothing is wasted, because all of it has worked towards helping me form me, and it has taught me stuff. It has given me insight. So I'm a big fan of the courage and jumping in, because I don't believe in failure. I'm just like, we're just learning. We're constantly learning. So I think probably courage is the first one. And I think the second one for me is passion, because I am just the type of person, I can't do something unless I'm really passionate about it. And so all the work that I've done, so like my first ever company was a children's entertainment company, which kind of makes me laugh now, which was literally entertaining kids. But even when I was doing that, I had this real belief of I wanted children to be connected to their imagination and magic. And so, I'd dress up as all these characters and get kids back into their imagination and play. So I did that for many, many years. I was really passionate about that. And then I started working in birth because, I had this really powerful birth experience, and I really wanted to help families have beautiful, positive starts. I'd had a traumatic first birth, and that was a lot, stepping into parenthood with that way. And I really, from that experience, I learned there is so many things that we can put in place to help that next transition into parenthood. And that's what got me working in birth. And I was really passionate about minimizing birth trauma for families, helping parents feel empowered, staying connected to babies. And then my next kind of work moved in a bit more around trauma because of my third birth experience with my daughter. And so I wanted to learn about trauma and help parents understand trauma. And then that moved into working just more with families around understanding their children more and creating healing. I was really passionate about speaking for the children, like not in places where kids can't be heard or we're not understanding what they're saying, being able to help adults understand that, and then healing their own stories as well. And so I think everything that I've done, I've been guided to do has come from a place of passion, and how do I make a difference, to these people or to the world. So for me, courage and passion have definitely been the driving forces, I think, in everything I've done.
Can I jump in? Sorry.
Yeah, go. We're both like, wait, I want to ask.
I listened to this interview years ago. This is going to sound like I'm off track, but I promise I'll bring it back in.
Okay.
Years ago with Olivia Newton-John, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember her being interviewed by somebody who was, I think she'd gotten cancer back again, and the interviewer was saying, how do you sort of grapple with this idea of it happening to you and having to deal with cancer, and do you ever feel sort of irritable and angry? And she just said, and I thought it was such a poignant thing, and it's really speaking to what you're saying, that sometimes the things that happen in our life, good or bad, are the things that unlock the next thing. Mm-hmm. She's like, if I had never been personally touched by cancer, I would never become this advocate for cancer. And now she's got this incredible hospital and she's doing these most amazing things. I mean, she's passed away now, but I thought that was such an interesting perspective on it, that she's like, unless I felt personally connected to it, I would have no reason to go about the next part in my life. And I see that in you, that, you had this traumatic birth and you're like, oh, this has happened to me. This is obviously going to be happening to other people. And as you move into parenting, this is what I'm learning. Oh, other people will need to learn that. And same thing with the school. Like, I've got these kids that don't necessarily fit in the traditional mold. How can I make that different? I see that these moments in your life that impact you, that you're then using to give back to the other people that you feel would benefit. I think that's such a beautiful thing. I think you have to know, but you can't know sometimes because you haven't had all the experiences that are going to unlock the next door for you, right?
Absolutely. So you just explained that so beautifully. Yeah, that has driven all my work. All like, even I spent 5 years teaching sex ed to teenagers in secondary schools. Again, another random job that I did, which came about because my son was going through puberty, and I remember just going, have I taught him enough? And is he going to be a respectful young man? And because I was a birth educator at the time, and I ended up going into the school and teaching the year 9s, I did this great birth education class. Like, my God, the teacher said to me, they were still talking about it 2 weeks later. It's a good class when they're still talking about it, right? Yeah. And then, somehow we ended up talking about sex ed for teens and they weren't doing anything at the school. And I was like, oh my God, you got to, because this is a really big thing. And somehow then I ended up back there doing it. And then that just moved on to something else. And I think in all those places, again, I was like, this is the information I would have wanted to know. This is the information I want my kids to know. Like if I'm needing it, then others are needing it. And then I ran workshops for parents on how to talk to your kids about sex because they were all freaking out about it. So it really has, I have seen my life through the different experiences I've had really shape and form where I've moved to. And I think coming from that place of, yes, if I'm learning it, and I think what's really important to me is authenticity and embodiment of the work. And I think that's probably why I haven't done the traditional paths of degrees and stuff like that, because I've wanted to live and experience it. And yes, that is just one perspective that I've had, but being able to come from that real humanitarian place of, I know what that pain feels like, or I know what that big trauma can feel like, or I know what it feels like when we don't feel connected to our children, or whatever it is, I think has really helped me just form my work to say, how can I make a difference in the world?
There's a key thread around connection. And for you, it's not just connecting with people, but then you seem to be able to connect people with different ideas or help them connect it to their own kids as well. So connection's a really big piece. And I'm wondering if you can help connect for the listener. There's something that you touched on before around that courage of asking for support, reaching out for support, asking for help. A lot of the time we say that they're pretty big words, but like, how would you actually tell a young person listening or a parent, what is it that they can do to actually go start asking for help, or the best ways that you've asked someone for advice or reach out, hey, actually, I really need this help? Because I think that can be a really daunting thing that sometimes stops people. In the most practical way, what's the first steps where you've been able to channel that courage to ask for help?
Well, I think the first piece when we're asking for help is we have to make peace with vulnerability, because I think a lot of people don't ask for help because they think it means that then they're weak or they're too vulnerable. And I think that's where we have to find a place of understanding within ourselves that actually we're not meant to know everything and we're not meant to do it all on our own. We're actually meant to be in community. We're meant to be in connection. So I think one of the first pieces for people is to actually be curious about any stories they have of, what does asking for help mean? Does it make me look like I'm weak? Does it make me look like I'm not competent? All those kind of things. And I think we have to break down that first to be like, people are there to support you. And what I have found in my experience is everybody wants to tell you their story, right? Everybody does. Everyone wants to tell you their story. And particularly people who've walked forward in front of you, when you can go to them and say, hey, I'm really inspired by what you do, or I would love to learn. How could I learn from you? Or what could you show me? Or what did you do so I can do this? So I really am a big fan of the mentor or doing an apprenticeship where we just soak up that wisdom, and be able to learn from someone who's done it before us. I think that's really important. I think coming back to how we ask for help, in many different ways, whether it's emotional help that we need, I think we sometimes have to be discerning about who we do ask for help. I know lots of young people are in families where it doesn't feel safe to go and say, hey, I'm not doing so well, because maybe they have to take care of their parents' feelings. Maybe there's not space for that there. And that's where I think school and communities can be amazing, that there is some infrastructure there that they can go to a teacher that they feel connected to, or perhaps there's wellbeing people there that they can go and say, hey, things are feeling really tricky for me, and can you help me? Like, what can I do? What can I access to do that? It takes a lot of courage. And I used to say to my kiddos all the time, like, take a friend. It always feels easier when you've got a friend with you that you trust. Go and just ask for help. The adults in your life want to actually help you, especially teachers. They're there to want to help you. And so, they try all sorts of ways to let you know they're there. And so, go to them, or whatever else you have in a community. Maybe it's a sports coach, maybe it's someone, because sometimes our family isn't the safest place to take it. So I think sometimes leaning into our friends and having someone with us to go and ask for help is a really good thing. I also think too, particularly when it comes to learning or support, it takes a lot of courage to ask for help, especially if you don't understand something, or you don't feel like you're doing it well, or perhaps you're in a system that's not meeting the way that you learn. And that can feel really, really tricky. And I think it takes a lot of courage to say, this doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how to do it, or, what else exists for me to get through this or to, complete what I need to. I think it's always about finding just that one person that you feel not judged by. For me, that's really, really important. And especially, maybe it's a teacher who doesn't necessarily teach you, but you just feel there's a safety within them and that you go to them, and ask for help there. I mean, to the adults listening and educators as well, I speak a lot to educators, and one of the things I say to them, which kind of ties back to what we were talking about in the beginning, like which teacher made an impact on your life. And I get everybody in my workshops to think about who was that one teacher that impacted you and why. What was it? And it's not usually the way they taught you Pythagoras theorem, right? It's usually because they connected, they took time to listen to you, they remembered stuff about you. It was all about connection. It was about being seen. And so to a lot of educators, I often say, do not underestimate the power of your energy when you are working with children, because as humans, we are constantly scanning our environment for safety, right? And we scan people. We go, does their face look open? Are they going to judge me? Are they going to tell me off and tell me to pull my socks up? Are they going to smile at me that makes me feel safe? Do they give me a high five as I walk by? You cannot, even though our system can feel pretty broken and there's a lot that's happening in it, do not underestimate the power of connection that you can bring to children, because it's in the safety, it's in us reading each other's bodies and sensing, hey, you look like a person that's not going to judge me, or you look like someone I can tell this big thing to, that is where we develop that muscle of asking for help, for support, and in our systems with a lot of things we can't change. What we can do, though, is be mindful of our energy and what we bring to these kids that we work with.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's so helpful. And I think listening to the very first part that you're saying is it starts with us, like us being, first of all, like, how do I feel about asking for help? So I can imagine for parents or the listener, being aware of, like, how do you model asking for help? How do you actually feel about it? Do you even talk about it? I do something like that with my kids where sometimes I have to say, so I've got 3 girls, and I sometimes have to say, like, when I say I'm not going to help you now, I mean as in I'm not going to do it for you, because I know I actually have a go with doing this. But it's having a name and model those sorts of things. And then I love that idea of then helping you help spot them, being able to go find the people you can go ask for. And something that I was listening just then is that I hadn't thought of, which sounds really silly, but getting them to go with a friend to go ask. I think it's a really lovely way. I'm just thinking is like almost building up that courage muscle, right? By slowly getting the support, so then they know it's okay. So eventually they become 50 like you, and they are just completely open to saying, hey, I'm going to build up a support network and ask people if I don't know stuff.
I said to my kids ever since they were like teenagers, like, speaking about our feelings and what's going on for us is one of the most important things that we can do, right? Because we're not meant to carry it alone. But I would say to them, I don't care if you don't come to me, but go to someone. And we would talk about who could be your people. And that would be a family friend, could be a grandparent, could be a teacher they connect with at school, could be paid therapy. And I've always said to them, I don't care who you go to. You do not have to come to me if it's something you don't want to share, but go to someone. You need to take these big problems and thoughts somewhere. We all need to be heard. We all need listening. My kids have had therapy over time, and they love it. They're like, it's great. You just get to talk about yourself. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. And they're like, can we do it each week? I was like, it's expensive.
Exactly.
Steady on.
Fortnightly.
Yeah.
They love it. It's such a normalized thing for them. They're like, it's amazing. I just got to support my friends. I got to support this. And I'm like, I love that they love it. I love that they see the value in it. And then they come and go when they feel they need it. But for me, I love that a default for them is talking about how you feel, asking for help, keeping a bigger, wider picture about what this might be teaching them, what is here for them. Like, that's what I love the most, that they've got that openness to be curious, to lean into what else is there.
Yeah, and Steve Biddulph, in some of his books, I know with like Raising Girls and Raising Boys, he talks about as they get older, it's helping them realize they can ask, but you also have to learn the discernment in who to ask. And that's the role that the adults in their life, or adults in their life, sometimes play, is realizing not everyone's able to be as trustworthy.
Yeah. It's interesting you talk about, because I worked in the high schools for many years, and it's often at the end of a class that one will kind of just hang around, the books will take long to pack up, and it will be a statement generally that's almost something you could dismiss. Generally, that's how it happens. They kind of just drop it in, and you could just be like, okay, yeah, and move on. But it's in those moments that you realize, oh, there's so much more here.
Yeah.
And they're always scanning. You can see it the way they look at you. They're always scanning for a reaction. And that's when I would never give one. I would just kind of sit there and go, okay, And I'd take longer to pack up. And then up for a long time together, and then they're not looking at you, and they're looking at the books, things are sort of coming out. But it's, as you said, it's this, they want the safety. And oftentimes I realize I'm almost like the first point of call, because really this is going to go to someone who really matters. And so I'm just a test to see how she's an adult, how is she going to react to me? But I found the best way was to actually not react and to just be there and to remain calm, continue packing up, divert eye contact, and let the things sort of come out. And then if it wasn't for me, to then get the right support for them. But it's funny how those really tricky conversations are often not the best timed.
Yes.
And start in a way that you're kind of like, I feel like this is not a real conversation. But what you realize is that actually that's just that little, just dip the toe in the water to see, am I in the right place here?
Yes. I love that you say that, and how beautiful that you've created those spaces for those kids. I mean, it's the same in a parenting context as well, especially with teenagers. It's when you say goodnight to them at 10 o'clock at night, and you, good night, darling, and then they're like, Mom. And then all of a sudden you sit in the bed for the next hour and they're just downloading everything, and you're like, could we have started this at 7 o'clock? No, they could not. It's got to happen then.
How your day was,
I should say that happens to Laura. I feel like not also out of school. She's a very good, people just love, they notice, and she just sort of does.
Thank you.
The pack up looks a bit different now out of the classroom, but you get lots of people opening up. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, what a privilege to stand in that beautiful place of safety for people, and I think that is one of the most beautiful skills we can develop, is safety for other humans, to be vulnerable, to ask for support, to ask for help. And I think that comes from when we know ourselves, and when we're kind and compassionate and we do our own inner work, then that is something that people pick up on and feel, and then, feel safe enough to bring it to you.
Yeah. When I was an assistant principal, I used to have up in my office, mainly to remind me to slow down, but I used to write go slow to go fast. And we used to talk about it with all the staff. So no matter what, because there's lots of change, but around the connection piece was you need to go slow to prove to these kids that we're worth their trust. So then you can go fast eventually. Yeah. But you need to invest in the time. If you just rush and you're coming and thinking of content or delivery, that no one cares about. Like, that's not what learning's about. It's about actually media. Like you said, it's about making it authentic and real. And I was really mindful. Is it okay if I ask about? The elephant in the room is
you're starting the school.
Yeah.
I was like, you asked for I asked.
Yeah. We both spotted it, right? So the thing that I had was, since this might sound a bit silly, but since starting a school, what have you discovered?
Okay. So what I've discovered is naivety is excellent, because I think if I had have known back then what I know now about building a school, I probably would never have done it. Creating a school is really tricky. It's and I didn't do it on my own. I had a partner, Mel. We did it together, and she was the one who came to me and said, let's do it, because she had her son was starting school. She was really unhappy with where the system was at, and so it was Mel that was like, come on, Lael, let's do it. She was a client of mine, and I was like, nah, I know nothing about building school. I don't even like education. Like, I was still a bit scarred from my own stuff, and my kids had struggled, and I was like, no, and she was just really like, nah, we've got this really beautiful opportunity to do it, and she could really provide the infrastructure, and she just was like, you create what you think should exist. So that's a huge undertaking, what's interesting now actually as I look back is that creating the school that we did, because I wasn't a teacher as such, like you guys, I came to it from a really different lens. I came from it through that trauma lens, through the connection lens, through the relationship lens. And then I'd take it to the principal, or I'd take it to the staff and go, can we do this? And they'd be like, no. And then they'd be like, but we could do this. And I was like, awesome. So we built something from the ground up, looking at it from a different angle, which sometimes is what brings some really amazing magic, right? Because when we're indoctrinated into something, we're like, this is how it's been done, this is how we should do it. But I love this saying, if you didn't know how it was supposed to be done, how would you do it? And I didn't know how it was supposed to be done, so I was like, let's just try this and let's see what happens. But I look at now and again, everything is as it's meant to be. I really do believe that. My naivety and belief and courage and passion was definitely what saw me through in the early parts of trying to bring it to life. I think, 5 years in now, knowing what I know now, I'd probably do it a bit differently.
Mhm.
But that's in any business that you do. It's a
Yeah.
learning curve, and you don't know what you don't know. And when you're trying to build something new and innovative, it's tricky. So what I think I have learned, from creating Woodline is I think I went in the beginning thinking we have to be the answer to a broken system. And that was a huge pressure to take on because
Yeah.
I'm like, we can't be. Nobody is the answer, right? And I think I was making the system very wrong and then therefore carrying all this pressure of we have to do it right. And so I began to realize that the system, it's been around for a long time. We all know that it probably needs changing and it needs an overhaul, but, it has served a purpose for a really long time. And, when we just demonize it and we make it bad and wrong, we're just sitting in the negativity of that. I'm like, and really what I had to learn was how do we just do something a little bit different? How do we be another option? Not the answer, just an option. Because I don't believe that we are the answer to everyone at all. Like all children are different. Like we suit some children, right? And then we also won't suit others. So, those kids that are pretty classically academic, love the routine, the rote learning, that kind of stuff, they probably wouldn't dig at what we do at our school because there's just a lot more flexibility. There's a big emphasis on creativity. And again, even though that serves many, many children, it may not be what meets them. So I think that first piece of just realizing that, we're just an option of what's there. We made heaps of mistakes. We still make mistakes. No school's perfect. We've learnt so much along the way. I've really come to, I think, learn with the creation of Woodline is that people matter so much. Like it really is the adults that you have around that are going to really help bring your vision to life, and it sounds like a beautiful vision, and we're a play-based learning school and kids climb trees and it's trauma informed, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. We're not pulling out the same thing each year. We are responding to the children, in the way that we teach, in the pedagogy we use, all those kind of stuff. So it's a lot of work. I think our teachers work really, really hard, but they believe in what we're doing. I feel like what I've learned also too is I didn't realize that our school would be a healing place for a lot of the parents, because I didn't realize in the beginning that a lot of adults have a lot of wounding around school and education, and they were coming to a place where that could kind of be heard. And so a lot of feelings came up for a lot of adults, which was interesting in the beginning. And I didn't think that would be there. I didn't even factor that in. I was like, oh yeah, okay, so this is a lot. And also the staff, a lot of feelings came up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's big. It's a really big thing. Education is a huge system. And I think everyone's got different needs, and then families, I think, are very stressed these days. And we have a lot of kids that have got a lot of needs that are not being met. And I think it's often a huge pressure on schools to meet them, and schools have limited resources and funding and all the things that you guys would know.
Yeah.
Teachers and educators are stressed, and so it's big. It's really big, and it definitely hasn't been easy. I'm so proud of what we've done, and really the hard work is not mine. It's the staff and our principal and our team. They are the ones that deserve all the recognition, because they are just extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary humans. And I just feel very privileged that I got to bring this to life and then handed that baby to them and said, okay, you guys then just made it even more amazing. So I feel like creating Woodline was one of the hardest things I've ever done.
Yeah.
Build another school, I'd be like, no way. No.
All right, let's take that off the list of questions. All right, sorry. Yeah.
Well, I think every educator at some stage thinks, God, imagine if we could.
Yes.
But working in the system,
it
is it's a big undertaking.
It's huge. You're basically building a village. And so, and I remember in the beginning thinking getting the school off ground's really hard. Just whether it's the money, the land, the council, it's the VRQA, it's the policies, it's the board, it's all the legal, it's massive. It's just such a massive job. There's a reason why people don't do it, because it's a lot, right? And ticking all those boxes, and then trying to convince parents to come and join as well, which was really big. Every family that was interested, I would ring and chat to for ages. And I remember getting off the phone one day thinking, I feel like I'm trying to sell a religion to people. This is really even though it's got nothing to do with any of that. But I was just this is what we believe and this is what we stand for. And that was a lot. It was hard. And
Yeah.
And, we've grown and changed and morphed over the years. And I know it hasn't been what everybody's wanted and needed. Like, there's been so much powerful growing. I said earlier on, there's no failure. I don't believe there is. I just think there is so much growth and learning. And I think coming to the end of our 5th year now, I feel we're finally probably hitting our straps now about what we are and what we do. And I think other people that I've spoken to who've also built schools have said the same thing. The first few years are really hard, really hard. Yeah. Then you find who you are, and then, and then it starts to hum a little bit more. But it's a massive moving system with a lot of people, a lot of feelings, a lot of stuff that goes on. It's huge. And so I think trying to find a balance that meets most of those needs is a tricky thing.
Yeah. And as you said before, there's no silver bullet, because if there was, we'd all be doing that. That's a really hard one. Every setting, every school, every kid, family, they're all different. So I'm imagining someone sitting here listening to this. Imagine that they're unaware of the really amazing successes that have happened for kids, for learners, because they might be sitting there like yourself, really frustrated with the system. They see their child and they go, oh, they need something that's a bit different. Maybe this isn't working. What are the key successes or the key things you've seen that have occurred in the school for the kids that you've got?
There's been many. I think on 2 different levels. On the emotional awareness level, children saying things like, I was never allowed to cry at my other school, but I'm allowed to cry here. That really got me. Kids being able to be attuned enough to go, I'm not ready to learn, I need to move my body. And we're like, great, what do you want to do? Go jump on the trampoline, go for a run. Like, being attuned enough to tune into themselves, finding their voices. It's always a good one. Being able to say, this is what I want, this is what it's not working. The beautiful kind of giving back, taking care of the land, which is something that we're really big about, just watching the care that they have done within that. I think the emotional, I set up the school really because that emotional lens was what I really wanted. Firstly, was just like, when we feel safe emotionally, then we are more likely to learn. When kids come in, they're in that fight or flight state, their nervous system stress, like no learning is going to go on. So the extraordinary shifts we've seen in some children who came to a school who would barely talk, who would never interact with other children, who wouldn't pick up a pencil, and then through the absolute love and safety and care of our team, they have morphed into just, these just really dropped a lot of that or healed a lot of that and stepped forward. I also just love that the learning, which has been a bit unconventional in certain places, but how giving, again, children permission to learn in ways that make sense to them, or really holding that beautiful safe space for them to process the blocks they've had to then be able to step into their learning, has been really awesome. So it's tricky. I sit on the board of the school, so I don't really have much to do with the day-to-day running of it anymore. Yeah. And, often when you're in this position, you just often hear about all the things that are going wrong, which is any leadership position. You're just putting out fires or seeing stuff that goes wrong. Yet my principal's really beautiful. She'll be like, okay, I need to give you all the things that are going great, and she'll tell me all the beautiful wins and the things we're seeing and the stuff they do. And I'm just like, okay, this is amazing. And I think what's really beautiful is we do PD days for educators to come and spend 2 days with us. And I often talk on one of those days, and it's really beautiful seeing the school through other people's eyes, showing them what we're doing, how we do it, just the level of care that we've brought into the spaces, the thoughtfulness behind everything that we do. That's what I think touches a lot of educators, and that's what really makes me go, okay, we're standing for something here, and we're seeing that when they take that back into their schools, that makes me feel really happy. Just even the smallest things, even if it's just those extra connections, even if it's just the smallest places or pieces that they understand about trauma, or ways we connect, or we're a non-punitive discipline school. We don't use punishments and rewards, but how we deal with behavior and how we work with the kids, and always looking behind the behavior, all those beautiful things. When I'm hearing about how we are not, they're taking that back, and they're not making kids wrong, and they're not calling them naughty, and they're not doing all of that, I go, okay, this is amazing to see that this ability exists.
And I think you can't be what you can't see, right? So I think that by creating the example of what is possible, because I think when I was on maternity leave, I had an amazing conversation with an American behaviorist, and she was big onto this. She used to hate the they're called click charts, where they would say that I'd never even heard of this before, but it was a big thing in the primary sector. And she was talking about this years ago about, how a behavior is always an unmet need or an undeveloped skill, right? Like if you really look behind everything. But then I went back into high school after having these conversations and being like, there's not the infrastructure for many of us to actually implement those things because we're still working in a system that is pretty developed and pretty set. So I think it's amazing that you're demonstrating how that's all possible. I want to put you on the spot, not to create the school, but let's say somebody came to you, they want to build a high school that's like a continuation of what you're doing. What are maybe 3 things you would advise them?
We're not going to ask you to join our board.
You don't have to join.
I do only. Okay, I would say you have to look at the emotional piece. Like, you really have to underpin how, if you are setting it up and you're wanting to build one, and I'm a big fan of, as you're saying, our current systems, when you've got one adult and 25 kids, you're going to have to give them a detention because, we don't have time sometimes for that connection or to tune in. Like it's not set up, I think, for this non-punitive discipline, especially in the secondary schools. I totally get that, right? And I think we're all still so conditioned as adults, this behaviorism paradigm, we reward you when you're good, we take something away from you when you're bad. That is still a huge part of our psyche. And so we still have this belief system, if someone does something wrong, we need to make them feel bad in order for them to do better. So I think for me, the first piece was, how are you going to do this? And that is really in the setup of it, which means you need more adults, you need smaller class sizes, you need opportunities for children to learn in ways that make sense to them, but also learn about what lights them up. For me, I'm like, that's one of the first things I'd say. The second thing I'd say, get rid of grades for the first few years. Get rid of all the grades, right? Because we want kids to learn because they love learning. And we know the research is out there. It talks about that. When we add grades to things, the first thing that children do is they're like, becomes that extrinsic motivation, not intrinsic motivation. Are they really learning what's going on? Like if we got rid of grades and just did this, hey, what do you like learning about? What feels good for you? What's easy? What exploring in a whole other way, again, would come back to what I said before around that. What if we just had permission to go, this is a time of figuring out who you are? Like, how do we do that? How do we do that well? So, again, I don't know how exactly you would do that, but that would be my dream. I'd bring back way more play in school as well. But then I think the third thing I would look at is definitely, especially for secondary school, is this massive rites of passage that we miss for teenagers, because they are going through a huge shift and transition into adulthood. We have lost community. We have lost the elders. We have lost these really embodied men and women to guide these next generations through. And I think we don't give our kids these initiations and rites of passage that they need. And so what they do is they try and find their own, and then that often goes a bit chaotic. So how do we fold that into the learning that we're doing here? And learning isn't, and for me, again, this is more than 3. Here we go. A list of 10. The other thing I would do is how do we teach these teenagers skills about being human, how to put a load of washing on and how to cook a meal and all the things that I know that some schools are starting to do, but how do we teach them to be good humans? Right. So focusing more on that, that piece, not just the academic piece. I just think again too, if we had the opportunity to shift it and really do it differently. And if we looked at all the things that we teach children, are they relevant now? That's one of the biggest things. We talk about this all the time at Woodline, is that the jobs these kids are going to have by the time they get into adulthood don't even exist yet, right? And the stuff that we have been told that we need to teach them has got zero relevance in this current day and age, right? So how do we prepare children for the future? And what I really believe is we need to teach children to be critical thinkers. We need to teach them to be discerning. We need to teach them how to trust their intuition and their gut. Like that for me is some of the most important things that we want to start teaching children, to then learn how to be good learners, to figure out, who they want to be and where they're going to be in the world. And I just don't think that we meet that on those levels at the moment.
So I think that's a nice list. I think we got the 12. I think 12, that's what we got in there. It was good. It was great. Yeah.
It was so good.
I'm really mindful of the time as well. Something that we do towards the end of our conversations is we've covered so much and there's so many different parts, and connection's been a really big piece of this, especially with also so connection with yourself, connection across all the different community aspects.
And purpose, connection to purpose and passion, right?
And so the final question that's jumped to my mind is, what haven't we asked you about that we should have?
Oh, gosh.
Being continuous learners, we like to always get this.
Well, something that I think is a really big theme in my work and ties into being continuous learners, but is about doing our own inner work. Like for me, that is one of the most important things we can do as a human, is to know ourselves deeply. And I think that whatever lens we're looking at, whether we want to be a good parent, whether we want to be a good educator, whether we want to be good at our job, or we're just a student that's learning through life, I think one of the most empowering things we can do is to know our own stories, is to understand where we've come from, to work through the things that no longer serve us, to be compassionate to ourselves, to be connected to our magic and who we are. And for me, I think if you were to ask me kind of like, what is this secret sauce of life? I'm like, it's knowing yourself well. Because the more we know ourselves well, the more we understand ourselves, I think hopefully we come to this place where we begin to understand that we're enough, and we are not our grades, and we're not how good we kick a footy, and we're not whether we can play the piano well. They are just things that we can do, but that we are enough just purely by being human. And I think in all the work I've done over all these years and having the privilege to sit with so many humans and hear their stories, the fundamental wound for most people is enoughness. Am I enough? Do you love me the way I am? Right? And a lot of the messages we get from society, from our parents, is no, you have to fit into this box in order to be lovable. And the work of most adults I work with is undoing that, to be able to know that they are enough and they are lovable just the way they are. And, our world is like complete chaos, right? It's like full on. And I really feel so many teachers and educators who are also really just like banging their head against the wall with what's going on currently, and feeling burnt out and can feel a bit in despair around where everything's at. And I just wanted to say to everyone, keep doing the work, keep knowing yourself, keep working through your stories, keep healing it. All these different things that we touch and all the work that we're doing, at the end of the day, we're all humans and we're all kind of walking around bumping into each other. And, what we need a lot more of is that beautiful centeredness and compassion for ourselves and for each other. And I think that that's what's going to make the difference in the world. That was a really good answer.
No, it's brilliant. This is part of the thing, is like, because if you hadn't shared all that, we wouldn't have got all those insights that you just passed on. Well, I mean, look, this episode, it's been more than enough, and we've loved it as well. See what I did there, Laura? Thank you so much for joining us on More Than a Score.
Thank you, Lael.
If you do know other people that, this is to our wonderful listeners out there as well.
And to Lael,
if you know anyone that has
a
unique pathway, different story, we all do, please reach out to us at morethanascorepod@gmail.com or on Instagram, Laura, isn't that right? At More Than a Score Pod. Lael, thank you so much for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure.
My pleasure. It's been a joy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks, Lael.
And I'll make sure I stop recording.